afternoon, my friends. This is Paul. Before we start, I just want to really give a quick warning just in case my warning card at the beginning either you couldn't read or it went too fast or something along those lines. This is for very mature audiences. I expect all of you to have basic sex education, basic knowledge of the differences between males and females, and I also expect you to have a mature, open outlook. If you're the type who's like hardcore feminist, this video is not for you. You're probably just going to end up feeling worse in your agenda. Also, this video is primarily intended for females, giving them advice on how to be sympathetic and caring and understanding when males are going through their struggles. But if you're a male watching this, I'm not going to kick you out, obviously. But if you want to add your own pieces of advice that maybe I forgot, or affirm, like, yeah, Paul, this is totally what we would want too, then maybe that could start a conversation with the females in the comment section, and then they can learn even more. So without further ado, let's get started. So I made a list of a handful of pieces of advice for what females can do when males are going through their struggles. Now, if you've watched my male struggles videos in the past, then you probably know that it's not just limited to the physical. There are also emotional and environmental things that males go through. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to list every single thing again here in this video. That would take too long, but hopefully you at least get the general gist of what I was saying so that this can speed along the process. So as I was thinking about what to do for this list, the very, very, very first thing that popped into my mind, hands down, was don't laugh. That was definitely something that really bothered me when I watched one of the earliest episodes of Arthur, which was called Arthur's Underwear. And in that episode, Binky accidentally ripped his pants and everyone started laughing because they could see his underwear. And I always thought that is so immature. But I've also seen that happen when a male is going through a struggle and the females don't really know what to do during that instance, so they either kind of just stand there punch drunk, like they don't know what's going on, or they start laughing. And laughing is one of the worst things that you can do to a guy. It makes it feel like everything he's going through is a joke. And let me emphasize that a lot of this is based on personal experience as a guy myself. So don't think that I'm just blabbing about a bunch of possibilities. Like, these are actual things that I would really like from females in my life. So yes, like, if you happen to involuntarily chuckle, just say, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. I know that this must be something that's hard for you. And maybe instead of laughing, like, I don't know, walk over and help out. But we're getting too ahead of ourselves. Let's go to the next item on the list. When a male is going through his struggles, sometimes females have the gut impulse of wanting to play the comparison game. And that is also pretty damaging. So the next item is don't victimize yourself. Some females like to think that whatever males are going through is trivial in the grand scheme of things. Some common arguments I've heard from females in my life are, oh, you males have nothing to worry about because you don't have to deal with periods or childbirth. And while that's definitely true, that's also downplaying the suffering that a man is going through. And it doesn't have to be just a male thing. Like, generally speaking, every single person in the world has something that they're suffering with. That's just human nature. So are you going to tell a cancer patient, like, oh, why are you complaining when there are homeless people out there? Or are you going to tell someone with a cold, like, you think you have it bad? Imagine people who have amputations. Don't downplay someone's pain just because someone else might have it worse. Because people also have different pain tolerances. So there are people out there that I've personally met where a broken arm hardly meant anything to them, and that person didn't even notice that he broke his arm. And his mother had to say, like, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. We should get you checked out. So don't necessarily think that you have it worse just by virtue of your own struggles. Like, realize that you don't fully understand what males are going through. And you never will, because from what I've researched, there are certain things that even if you transition into being a male, if you're transgender, there are certain things that don't carry over. So instead of thinking that this is some unsolvable mystery that the cosmos has just kept from your grasp, realize that you also have problems, but that doesn't mean that male problems don't exist. So, another thing to keep in mind is that when males are having an erection, they oftentimes feel very embarrassed about it, especially if they're going through puberty, because during puberty, erections are kind of all over the place, very, very random and sporadic. It doesn't even have to be sexual stimulation, it could just be anything, like literally anything. And sometimes females like to, well, I'm getting too ahead of myself on the list, but they often don't know what to do during those instances. However, there are a handful of methods, at least during adult years, that can definitely help in minimizing the swelling. And one of the best pieces of advice that I have heard is to think about something that is annoying and aggravating. Sometimes for me personally, I have to go to really crazy extremes. Like I have to imagine someone getting their eyes stabbed out with forks and having the shower have vomit coming out of it. But one thing that my ex-girlfriend used to do is she would take out her phone and she'd play this really annoying synthetic song that was for kids, like, I don't know, Baby Shark, for example. That song is so annoying. And a lot of times that would actually really help because once a male gets older, erections are primarily caused by sexual stimulation or an overabundance of movement. So, that's caused by them getting excited, not necessarily on purpose, but that's a general term. But if they're not excited, if they're dreading something and something is terrible, then logically speaking, that should help. It doesn't work for everyone, but I think generally speaking, once they're at least like in their 20s or 30s, that should really start helping out a lot. So pretty much every girl nowadays carries their phone with them, so just pop out something on YouTube and that should really help. Another thing that in general both males and females could learn from is just simply asking the question, what can I do for you? If you have no idea what to do, and if you're the type that isn't very good at remembering every single thing that I've said during this video, at least remember this one. Like, put it on a sticky note, make a reminder on your phone, whatever you have to do, especially if you have ADHD, like, make sure you remember this one. Sometimes the best way to help a male is to ask him to give you the advice in the moment because everything that I'm saying is obviously from my personal experience, but that doesn't mean that every single male is exactly the same as I am. So they might want something a little bit different. Now, I'm assuming that when you're asking this question, it's a pure chaste male that is not going to ask you to do something suggestive. That's the kind of question you want to avoid asking if you're around a legitimate creep. But if you're around a good-hearted male that's just having struggles, then ask him, what can I do for you? Then that can really help quite a lot. The next item on the list is think about your own parallels. One thing that I think a lot of females struggle with is knowing what to do when, for example, a man is kicked in the testicles. They're just like, I've never had to go through that, so I can't even imagine the pain that you must be going through. And to a certain extent, yes, that's true. Like, you will never know that kind of pain. I can try to describe it. It's the closest I can come to describing it is it feels like a gut punch to the stomach because the stomach actually does experience some levels of pain during that moment. And it feels like a combination of being punched and stabbed at the same time, I would say. And then it kind of like lingers in this very throbbing kind of atmosphere. So obviously, there's no way to 100% know what that feels like, but as I'm saying this, I imagine some of you might say, oh, That kind of reminds me a little bit of period cramps. Maybe, I don't know. Obviously, as a male, I don't know what it feels like to have period cramps, but you can still at least draw some kind of parallel to what's going on for you. Obviously, females have what's called ovaries, which are, from what I've been told, very similar to the testicles, albeit they're inside the body. And I've also heard that if females get attacked down there hard enough, like say if they run into a desk edge, and if it happens to attack where the ovaries are, that can cause a similar, albeit less intense, version of what males go through. So the next time you think that a male struggle is totally out of your league, think about what it is that you go through that's very similar in nature. And then hopefully that'll help you at least pseudo sympathize. I know it helps for me quite a lot when females say, like, well, I don't know exactly what you go through, but I have this particular body part that is very similar. That helps me quite a lot. Now, here's the really hard part. I think females just struggle with quite a lot, at least from what I have heard. Maybe it's not actually true, but from the females that I've talked to, this seems to be something that is extremely gut impulsy. And that's when a male is having an erection, which granted, it might not always be the easiest to spot, but like say it's at the swimming pool where it's very obvious, don't jump to conclusions. As I said earlier, it's not necessarily always caused by sexual stimulation. Sometimes it happens if there's an overabundance of movement. Sometimes a bumpy car ride can trigger it. Sometimes it just happens during a male's sleep as a natural response to being in a very relaxed environment. Sometimes extreme serenity can cause it. Like I've heard that like sometimes it happens when a male is like doing yoga and it's just so immensely relaxed that can happen. So if you happen to wander your eyes down there, then I ask you to not necessarily think that it's because of you, that because you're sexually revealing or that you're doing something promiscuous. It might not be that at all. And even if it is, it might not be something that you can control. Maybe you're just a very pretty girl. Maybe the male just appreciates your natural beauty, but it just happens to cause uncontrollable bodily sensations. But that's not something you should shame the man for. It's something that, if anything, you should be proud of. That you're not ugly and God created you. And again, it might not necessarily be you, but like you shouldn't be ashamed of your own beauty. Like a lot of females, they go to so many lengths, so I've been told, to like put on the best makeup and make themselves as presentable as possible. But in moments where they say, ew, why is he having an erection around me? It's almost like you're defeating the purpose. Obviously, I know that most of you aren't trying to make that happen with males, but if it just happens to be a byproduct of heterosexual attraction, then don't automatically assume that that's the case. But if it is, don't like inwardly or outwardly shame the man, thinking that he should get it under control. Let me repeat, he does not have full control of his body during that moment. It's not like your arm where you have a great, tremendous amount of control. You can rotate it and go up and down. Like there is very little that a man can do physically with that particular body part. So don't automatically assume that he's putting on a show or faking it. Next, which is kind of the same thing, but this is more of a general piece of advice for any male struggle, physical or environmental or emotional, is don't shame males for what they can't control. Now, I just did a whole thing about when a male is stimulated, but now I'm going to talk about like other things that are a little bit more subtle. Like, for example, the male gaze is something that so many females get the wrong impression about. They think that, well, I shouldn't say all, but a great deal of females think that the male gaze is this very disgusting, perverted thing that males do, that they're sex-hungry maniacs and all males think about is sex, which is blatantly untrue and hurtful. So if you're thinking that, stop! But second, there are certain things that happen to males that they cannot control. And usually after they realize they can control it, they have to go to very extreme measures to stop it. So for example, the male gaze is something that most males don't even think about. It's a very subconscious thing for their eyes to wander to certain parts of the female body because they're appreciating what God made. Like, if you're outside and you're seeing a beautiful sunrise or some amazing trees in the woods, your natural reaction isn't going to be, oh, I better not look because that's too attractive. I don't want to see that. No, you're going to try to gaze at that as much as possible. Of course, there's a right and a wrong way to do it. Obviously, you don't want the male to be lusting, but most of the time, the male gaze isn't lusting. It's just how our bodies were wired, is we're just naturally going to be very observant of the opposite gender. And I know that females kind of do that with their ears and also like with their psychoanalysis. I mentioned in my male struggles video that from what I have seen, the female equivalent to the male gaze is the female psychoanalysis, where they kind of like draw a lot of conclusions about a male before they've even like met him or gotten to know him. And sometimes those conclusions end up being false, that it's just based on their intuition. So if a male happens to have his eyes moving toward an area of your body that you don't want him looking at, don't automatically assume that he's hungry for sex or that he's trying to undress you in his mind. Like, that's just part of being a male. And yeah, some males are creepy when they do that. But if you really know the male that you're talking to, then don't inwardly be disgusted. Like, try to the best of your ability to remember, again, go back to the other thing about think about your own parallels and realize that you females have the ears and you also have the psychoanalysis. And to some females, like female porn is a real thing. You can have these fantasies of like what a male should be. And so, like, don't think that males are the only ones with the problem here. And finally, the last item that I have, I'm probably missing a few, but hey, this video would go on much longer if I didn't, is give males a chance. So many females, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but it seems like in recent memory, it seems like the number is just skyrocketing of females that shame males for, well, just about anything, really. There's this movement going on where, like, males have to apologize for being privileged or being white. And not only that, but, like, sometimes females are really on edge about the fact that most females are physically weaker and more females than males are victims of sexual assault. That doesn't mean that males don't have any of that. It's just that it's a higher margin. And so most females are on really high alert to make sure that they're protected, and they do stuff like carry pepper spray and practice self-defensive maneuvers. However, while it's good to be on high alert, I'm on high alert and I'm a male because, you know, I've been a victim of this similar stuff. But that also means that because of all of this tension, sometimes it causes females to automatically assume that all males, or at least most of them, are these creeps, when in reality, you probably don't have too many in your immediate vicinity or your neighborhood that are actually going to harm you. Where I live, it's actually a very peaceful place where I've actually done this before, where some female friends of mine and we decided to go swimming, and we walked there in our swimsuits, and no one gave us any problems. I don't even think there were people outside to begin with. But that doesn't mean all females are like that. But generally speaking, I think more males than not are actually going to be the innocent ones that aren't going to want to hurt you. So instead of jumping the gun and making all of these assumptions about what the male is thinking and what the male wants and what the male desires. And just give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe realize that your intuition is not foolproof. It is not a doctor's diagnosis. And just because you're getting bad vibes does not mean that that is the gospel truth. Now, granted, I'm not saying you shouldn't trust your intuition at all. I just talked to one of my friends and she said, I'd rather trust the impulse if it's going to protect me than to be naive. And that's totally fine. But I also think that if those impulses turn out to be right, then maybe like only half trust it. Like, sure, you'll be on guard, but don't like be so totally on guard that you won't allow him to possibly be a really good friend of yours. Because then you're kind of putting males in a box, and in a certain extent, you're also being kind of sexist. So realize that not all males are going to be these creepy, sex-hungry maniacs. Maybe you've just watched too much TV, and they do a really bad job of representing us as a whole. So I hope that has given you some advice on what to do and what not to do when a male is struggling with his various issues. And I really hope you took sex education beforehand, because I really hope I don't have to explain most of this in detail. So if you're a female watching this, let me know in the comment section if this has helped you or if this has given you more insight on what males go through. If you're a male watching this, let me know if these comments like help you during your struggles, and if you want to add anything that maybe I missed, then hopefully the females that scroll through the comment section might learn even more. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I already mentioned what to put in the comment section, so I guess I won't say my usual catchphrase, and just I hope you guys have a wonderful Easter, because I filmed this on Holy Saturday, and until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless.